Hey, hello. Welcome to episode number 94 of the People We Love podcast. I am Adam Choit. What's up? If you are new here, what I do is interview people from all walks of life, most often comedians and other artists about their lives and careers. It's casual conversation, but I also ask everyone to highlight someone they love, sometimes more than one person. It's usually people they admire, of course, and people who influenced them, inspired them, or supported them. For more, check out peoplewelovepodcast.com. That's peoplewelovepodcast.com, and the Instagram handle is at peoplewelovepodcast. And you can find me on Instagram as well at Adam Choit, my name, if you want to follow me too. And it's the same on Twitter at Adam Choit. And please remember to tap subscribe or follow on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. And of course, positive reviews on iTunes are greatly appreciated as well. So today's guest is comedian Shaun White. Growing up spending time in both Huntsville, Alabama and Atlanta, Georgia, as a kid he grew up getting into trouble but also eventually getting into theater acting as well. Shaun's journey from the theater into stand-up comedy is quite the odyssey, filled with lots of loss and his always supportive family. We cover a lot: dad's time as a lawyer working in Petco, of all places, and mom thinking all stand-up comedy is mean. This intro is truly an intro that just scratches the surface. So we should just get started. Here's Shaun White. All right, so it's good to see you today, Shaun White. Thank you for joining me on the Zoom. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you very much for having me, man. I appreciate it. How's it like on your side of the Zoom world?
My side of the Zoom world, it's okay. I'm alive. We're alive. How are you holding up during this super fun 2020?
I'm doing all right. A little insane for the most part. I think everybody just goes a little stir crazy. Either that or they're the people that have been going out regardless, completely ignoring it the entire fucking time and are somehow guilt-free about the entire process. I've had people hit me up and be like, "Dude, do you want to hang out?" I'm like, "Wait, we're allowed to?" And
I want to be
friends
friends with those people. Let's connect me to them. I'll be
I
hanging
don't
with
want
them.
I don't want anywhere near them, but they feel they're dirty as fuck. They're like, I have a lot of my friends that will be like, man, they're still going on like Bumble and Tinder and stuff like that. Like they're still going on dates like with strangers. I get it, man, but I'm trying to been a good little citizen and locked up with my alcohol.
Yeah. No, they have it right. They're taking the alcohol out.
I do think it's kind of neat.
But someday we'll be free.
Because when they were doing like the patio dining and stuff like that, like I had friends that worked at that kind of stuff, and they were still seeing people come out constantly for first dates in the middle of a pandemic. Can you imagine,
Sure.
like me? Do you live with anybody, or you live by yourself?
I'm by myself.
Okay, that's. That's got to be at a certain point. Maybe that's because I live with my girlfriend, so at least I have another human in the property. If I was living by myself during this time, that would drive me insane. That's got to be a little bit too much. So really, how are you holding up?
I'm fine. I've heard mixed things, to be honest with you. I've heard people in relationships who are living together who are like, yo, you're lucky that you're not in a relationship right now. Or I've heard people like, how do you do it? Don't you get lonely? Or, all these kinds of things. So I don't know. It all depends on your perspective and situation and whatever. Yeah, I'm good.
Well, we've gotten like really good at fighting for the most part. Like that's
good at fighting. That's good. That's important.
It's so much faster now. Like it used to take like long periods of time, and now we've gotten it so it's like a process of like bing, bang, boom, and then we're like being able to get back on the road. Like because we both know there's no place else to go and there's someone else to talk to. So if you start a fight with that person, then you have no one else to complain to about anything else. So if I want to complain about anything else in the world, I have to make this work. So it's like.
No, I was going to say that's interesting. What's an example of something like that? Because that's just basically you're avoiding being passive aggressive, which can be challenging in relationships because you don't want to hurt people's feelings. But what's the secret to getting to what it sounds like is the point of the fight and a potential resolution? Is it just being honest right away, or like what is it that you're doing? You guys do?
Yeah, I would say that definitely helps a decent bit. Sorry, one of my cats was coming up. But I would say one of the main things about it is not you can't do the whole I don't want to talk about this right now and go somewhere else because there's
Right.
nowhere else to go.
Oh, I
So
see.
because of that, you end like the worst I can do is drive around the block. What am I going to do? Am I going to? You can't escape the problem, so it forces you to deal with it faster. So because like I can't go like I'm just going to go to the fucking bar. Fuck you. You know what I mean? Like you can't. There's no place to go. I'm going to go watch the game. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing to do. Like so you end up just like where I mean I only have like a one bedroom. That means we have like there's the one bedroom and then there's a living room. Unless I like hide out in the bathroom, there's no place else to go that you can possibly escape from anything.
I wonder what her thoughts are on this. She's like, why is he talking about? Why is he even trying to escape? Where's he trying to run to in the first place? Or maybe everyone needs to have some space at some point. But why don't we get into your life and you could tell me about it? And why don't we start at the early days? What do you remember from the drive home from the hospital?
See, I think my first like memory isn't until like fourth grade or something like that. Like
Really?
third or fourth. I think I don't know. It was elementary school. Well, that's the earliest thing I remember because I remember it was after Valentine's Day, and it was the age when they made you make your own box to put the Valentines in and stuff like that. And like that's what they made you do at school on Valentine's Day was make Valentines for other people and make your own box for them. And I remember emptying out the Valentines that I got on like my grandmother's floor or something like that. And I don't know why that's like one of the first memories I have ever. Like I don't remember anything before that one Valentine's
Well,
Day.
that's exciting. You're seeing Who Loves You
Oh, I don't remember what
a
any of the
paper
cards.
trail of Who Loves You.
I don't remember what any of the cards. I mean, I think there's just that, that bullshit busy work where naturally, you make every student in the class give every student in the class one kind of thing.
Yeah.
I do. But that was like the very first memory I have is emptying that box out. I don't know. I don't remember reading any of them. I just remember doing like this with the box and emptying them out on the steps, and that's pretty much it. That was in Huntsville, Alabama, uh, where I was born and raised.
And that was from that day, from the Valentine's Day, from that age till all the way through like high school or something. Like you were,
No,
or you
it's like
moved around.
that's the first one. Or no, I lived in so weird story. I lived in Alabama up until fifth or it was like third or fourth grade or something like that. And then I moved for fifth grade to Atlanta, Georgia. And then we moved back when I was halfway through sixth grade because me and my brother kept getting arrested. And so me and my brother moved with my dad back to Alabama while my two sisters and mom stayed in Atlanta. And then for every weekend for the next like something like 2.5, 3 years or something like that, drove back between Alabama and Atlanta every single weekend that whole time. And so it was either I drove to, or my family, or my dad drove me and my brother to Atlanta to see my sisters, or my mom would drive to Alabama to see us. And then eventually we had to move forcibly because we were waiting for my dad to pass the bar as a lawyer in Georgia. But somebody put a car bomb on his car, so we left earlier. And he worked at a Petco in Atlanta until he passed the bar in Georgia and could practice law there. But he got 7 of our 9 city councilmen arrested. And then on Third Circuit Court, they all got released on appeal. And then his car blew up into flames like a week later. And that's when we decided to leave Alabama altogether. And that was shit. I think that would be like 1999, somewhere around there.
Okay, so wait, hold on. That's a lot to unwrap and unpack already. First of all, you said, let's go back. You said you and your brother got arrested when you were in like fifth or
Yeah.
sixth grade? What do you mean you got arrested when you were
Both of us,
adolescents?
for fighting, and me
Fighting
also,
who?
other kids, and then also me another time as well for stealing.
Yeah,
I got
why are you fighting? Why are you stealing? Are you bad kids, or is this just like
We're just new kids in Atlanta, and there's just like kids will come up and test you, or they don't know you've been where you've been around. For some reason, one dude, I don't know why the one guy wanted to fight my brother. My brother never talked to anybody. He was just a quiet nerd that pretty much kept to himself for the most part. But for me, I've always had just had, but everybody in my family's always had like blackout rage since we were like little kids. So like when we get angry, we don't remember any of it for the most part. And good, once you kick into gear, and you can't
wow,
really stop it.
dude? I better watch what I say.
No, and that's the thing is you get older and older, and it dies and dies and dies until eventually you can smother it with a drink. You can just pour one little drink on top of that fire, and it's gone. But when we were younger, we were all like piss and vinegar, and it goes away pretty quick. But I got arrested for stealing from a Target. I was actually a friend in the neighborhood, Brent, redheaded motherfucker, and brought his little sister along for us to go to Target and steal stuff. Because we would just steal stuff from the store, and I even stole a Barbie for her, like as just a nice thing to do for the little girl. And then of course we get caught, and like Brent leaves his own sister there at the scene of the crime and hops on his bike and rides away, and I couldn't leave her, so I stayed. Not that it would have done any good. She obviously would have told them. You know what I mean? She
How
would
old
have.
was
I'm sure.
she? How old were you, and how old were you?
Well, we
Was the
were
sister?
sixth grade. She was like third grade or something. Like
Yeah, that's
seriously,
pretty young to
super
just
young.
leave at Target
Yeah,
by yourself.
that's why I didn't. But at the time, it didn't. I didn't know. I couldn't leave a little kid, and even though I was a little kid, but it was a littler. You know what I mean? Like I'm not gonna leave a little girl who doesn't even probably understand what we were doing. You know?
What did Target do to you? Did Target test you
Just
also?
no. They called my parents and banned me from Target.
No, I
Um,
mean to prompt you stealing from them because that's different than rage, theft. Where does
oh, that was
the
just
thievery come from? Just kids being
oh
kids. Just
yeah, just because kids being kids, I wasn't really into it. Like I didn't really do like a ton of shoplifting or anything like that. This is like a brief phase in sixth grade when when the idea was introduced to me that you could just take things. Obviously, I experimented with that for a second before going, this is not really my thing. Like I got caught too often to do that kind of a thing. I was a bad thief, so that's probably why I didn't stick. But I did. I remember I would steal books from the book fair. Um, like Goosebumps. I would steal Goosebumps books from the book fair when I was a
you
little kid.
stole things you wanted. It wasn't about the thrill so much, or maybe it was
Yeah,
partially, but it seemed at least a big part of it was you're like, I want this thing, which makes
yeah,
sense.
pretty greedy. It's just a very simple motive for me. But I never did any of that kind of stuff again. But that's why me and my brother got moved from Atlanta back to Alabama before we moved back to Atlanta again later.
Was
So
it that you got arrested and or whatever, and like you had to leave because of disciplinary reasons, or was it more like it's not working out for us in
yeah, my
Atlanta?
parents just
We got
thought.
to we got to move him back to Alabama where it's a better place for him to be and his
Yeah,
brother.
they thought it would be a better fit, and because they were like, "Look, you guys aren't adjusting well. We'll just take you back, let you finish middle school over there, and then we'll bring you back for high school." And that ended up being what happened. And then
Well,
we moved back later.
yeah. Well, besides the hijinks and the trouble that you got into, what kind of kid were you besides that? Like growing up in elementary school through middle school, even a little, in those days. Like, what
Well,
were you into? Or did you get good grades, bad grades? Were you always
I got
getting into
I got good.
trouble?
Yeah, I got good grades, and I usually always also got in trouble pretty often because I was always like I was put in anger management when I was a little kid because I was always really aggressive. Um, and I'm trying to think, like I played some sort. I see. I remember when I am in my own memory, look back and go like, well, what kind of kid was I? I imagine I was like, kind of chill, whatever, like a normal kid. But I have seen the photos of me, and I was not. I obviously was always having like I had either some kind of like physical injury, like a busted lip or something like that when I was smiling or something, or I have this death stare of just absolutely no expression on my face. Like all the kids are smiling for class photo, and I'm the only one sitting there. Looks like he's the evil one. Like I didn't even like think about but in my mind I go like I remember smiling as a kid, but all the photos are almost all of them are of me scowling at the camera for some reason, and I don't remember acting that way. But the more I look at photos, I go like, well, that's fucking evidence. Like it's right there that it shows right there that I was scowling at the camera every class picture, like every year. Like it's that same like smile, 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 and then somebody staring the camera down like he wants to kill it. I don't know why I had that look as a kid, but it was that's when I think what kind of kid I really was, despite me thinking I was actually a pretty normal kid.
What were you? You know what it sounds like? Maybe really you're just kind of. I mean, an extreme version of angsty. Really, is that what is that really what it is? You know, because
I don't know. I don't remember feeling all that. I remember being. I thought I was. I bet you. I thought I had a neutral face, like that. I was just like. But I think when people realize, when I didn't realize this at the time, having a neutral expression of having absolutely no expression on your face can be perceived as like resting bitch face in women and other things like that.
sure.
Like so it can be just that what I thought looked relaxed was in fact looked just when I look back at the photos going like, oh man, why were like you look so serious for a fucking kid? And I'm like, I
I've been
realize I have
told the
like,
same. I've been told the
yeah,
same by my mom and parents. Like looking at photos, like don't have to be so stiff. You don't have to be so serious. I'm like, I don't know. That's just what my face looks like in photographs.
but that's I mean other than that, I don't think I was too rambunctious of a child. Just played video games and other stuff like that, and did the normal kid stuff and sports and everything. And um, until in theater or until in high school when I got into theater, but that was when I moved back to Atlanta the second time.
How old were you when you moved back to Atlanta?
Oh, that was high school. So ninth grade, which is like what, 15 or something like that. So 15, 16 was when I moved back to Atlanta and went to high school there.
What did your mom and your dad and your parents like think of like your? I mean, this is maybe a better question for them. But what did you think that they thought about you and your life and where you were headed? I mean, it sounds like you weren't a terrible kid, even though you got into some trouble and made some crazy choices. But what did they you think they thought of you at the time and your
I
direction?
don't know. I think that they just thought of me more as a loner that always had to leave home. So like two of my because I have three siblings, or I had three siblings. So like two of them would stay at home and like really kind of like were much more communicative to my parents and everything like that. While my oldest sister Elise tended to go and do her own thing, and I was showing similarities to that. So I think they just assumed he was going to do his own thing and come back around when he wants to. They weren't too pushy in too many directions, to be perfectly honest, and they were supportive about just whatever I wanted to do. But they just didn't have any money. Other than that, they were, you know, good parents and supportive and everything like that. Not that you have to have money to be a good parent, but you know what I mean. Like they didn't give
Sure.
me any kind of like ridiculous up. They couldn't. Everything I had was still like public and everything, like public school, public education, everything like that. Um, but they didn't really interfere too much in my life. Like they were very supportive in just about everything. My mom even like was supportive when I started doing stand up, and she never even like what stand up is. She thinks it's mean. She thinks telling jokes is inherently mean, and so
Roasting
it's
is
like,
mean.
well, she thinks all of it is. It's just like it's only a matter of time before it becomes mean. So like she was like anti stand up in any way, shape, or fashion, even though my dad liked it.
That's funny. You said you were you the youngest? Are you the youngest of all your siblings? Were you the youngest?
Yes, sir. I am the youngest.
Okay, well now that I feel like I don't know, I'm not trying to stereotype or
Well, for sure.
generalize the youngest siblings, but I feel like maybe that makes a little bit more sense in some
Well,
ways.
yeah, luckily, because like my older sister at least had broken every rule and everything so much so that
Right,
like
that's a
one
big
thing,
part of
one
it
thing
too,
I
I'm
did,
sure.
yeah, when your parents go like, man, I've seen it before. We're not interested in this anymore. Where we know how to know our way around it. Like, so there wasn't really. I think it was the only thing that was weird with me is just living with one parent for so many years, and that weird, just awkward drive every single week just to see my mom for 2 days. It felt like being in a divorced family, even though they were technically together. They were just separated.
How far apart? Did I ask you this already? How far apart Huntsville and Atlanta
Four
are?
and a half, 4.5 hours was how
Yeah,
long the
that's
drive
not
was.
around the corner.
No, man, that's why it was a trek all the time. Like I still remember just about every place on the road between those two locations from just driving back and forth and back and forth and back and forth my entire childhood.
Did you enjoy the part of the drive at all, or enjoy it looking back, or appreciate the time with
I
your
mean,
dad?
looking back and appreciating, I remember the jokes me and my brother would make and like the music my dad would play because like especially during the holidays when we do that, my dad would always play these weird rockabilly Christmas songs and shit like that, and then me and my brother would just make fun of signs. Like we were, obviously, we would just read signs with funny voices. That was it. That's nothing much to the
Yeah.
joke, but it was just something that we would do every single time, and it would drive my dad fucking insane until he would threaten to hit us if we didn't stop.
Dude, this
And
sounds
then
like
we
fond memories to me.
no, they are now. They are now. But like when you're a kid, you're like, I don't want to be stuck in this fucking car anymore. Every single time we're just spending an entire 8-hour day once a week in a car sucks. Like when you're a kid, but
Yeah. I
you're
don't
like,
like
damn
it now.
it. Yeah, no, it fucking sucks, man. But at least now you can choose when you stop. Like you weren't like your dad who's like, no, we're not fucking stopping. No, we're not
Yeah.
stopping. Yes, we're gonna listen to. So we listen to weird like AM preachers and stuff like that.
Oh boy.
And they're like in Alabama, in the middle of nowhere, AM radio. You can pick up some weird fucking religious programs. And there was one we were listening to. It was by a psychic slash priest called Mother Mohawk, and that was the name. That's all I really remember about the radio show was it was for a miracle woman called Mother Mohawk that would heal all your sins, and that she was advertised somewhere between Alabama and Georgia, where there was like you could pick it up on AM, and there would be people testifying over like it's just like one of those like scientists like also gets I think like guest all these like but you fill out a form to be able to get on it. So then she just kind of reads off what's on the form. One of those like fake magician kind of tricks, but like meant
That
to
could
be
at
a
least be
healer.
entertaining.
Yeah, and it was well, no, that's why it's a fond memory. Like I remember that shit going like, oh, I remember Mother Mohawk was a joke in my house for like a long time after that, where it would be like Mother Mohawk forgives you, and it was just always like there was always the dumbest shit. Like I love those middle of nowhere country radio programs.
I wanted to ask you about something you mentioned sometime back in this conversation when you said that your dad was uh, pursuing becoming a lawyer, I believe, and then his car got blown up a couple of times, and I believe by
Uh,
city council people. Was there some
no,
kind
it
of
was
political scandal or something going on where some shady
there
shysters
was
in
in
politics were going after him?
in in Huntsville, Alabama, a long time ago. Uh, but they were bulldozing shanty towns. Like so, any place homeless people stayed, even on federal property, like under an overpass or things like that. The local city council was pretty much just grabbing homeless, throwing them in a car, then taking them to the edge of the county and throwing them out. And then bulldozing all their property and stuff like that, so they have nothing to come back to. And so my dad did was he uh, represented the homeless shelters in a suit against them because the act of doing that anyways is a crime, and he found evidence that 7 of the 9 city councilmen knew about what was going to happen and did nothing to stop it. And so they're thus accessories to the police brutalizing these homeless people. And so my dad taught the shelters how to collect evidence and everything like that, and teach how the homeless people how to collect evidence. And they collected because they were literally giving pamphlets out. This is where they fucked up because they wrote like evidence of it. They like wrote flyers to be like, you know, to give to the homeless to be like, get the fuck out. You know, we're about to bulldoze your shit if you're not gone by this time. And that was like the evidence they used to prove that, well, these came from your office, so you knew what you were fucking about to do to these homeless people, so you can prove it. And then you got 7 of them sent to jail, and then on the
Wow.
Third Circuit Court of Appeals, they they said you have to prove that all 9 know what happened to prove that it was a conspiracy, and if only 7 of 9, that's not enough to say that they all did. And so because he couldn't prove anything on the other 2, all 7 walked. And then right after that, his car burst into flames and we decided to move to
Wow.
Atlanta. But I do not know if I mean that's the story as I know it. And I do remember his car bursting into flames, but I mean, obviously, I didn't see anybody put an explosive under his car. I wasn't there, you know. And
Wow.
that's when we decided to just go ahead and move to Atlanta, anyways. He got a job at Petco because he couldn't get a job doing law because he hadn't passed the bar in Georgia. He'd only passed it in Alabama, so he could practice law in Alabama, but couldn't in Georgia. So he still needed a job. So he was the tropical fish guy at a Petco in Atlanta for like my first year of high school, which is like the weirdest job I remember him having. Your dad going from a lawyer to being a fish guy at a pet store, which is a real fucking change.
Yeah, I suppose so. Tropical fish are cool though. There's worse
I guess.
departments to be in. At least he wasn't in like kitty litter or something like that.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know why he just as a hobby he just liked tropical fish. We didn't have like a ton of fish
Oh,
or
he
anything like that.
requested to be in the tropical fish
Yeah,
department. It sounds like.
he wanted to be the tropical fish guy until he passed the bar, and then he started. Then he just practiced law in Georgia after that, and never had to go back to Petco ever again.
Oh, that's cool. And when you were in high school, you said you started to discover comedy. Where did you think you were headed with your life, like junior, senior year in high school? Like, what did you think you'd be doing? What were your plans, college or otherwise?
Oh, at
Was
that point, I
comedy
was
part of
studying.
it?
No, comedy wasn't a part. I was a comedic actor at the time. I was
Oh
doing.
yeah, theater.
Yeah, I was doing theater at that time, and that's what I was going to college to do was to do theater. So I had always planned on doing some form of acting or performance. At that time I hadn't even done stand up before. I mean, I had watched it and loved it, but I had never done it myself at that point.
What about the so what drew so when did you actually start theater? What drew you into it? Were you always into it? It was a good outlet for you
No, I mean,
performing, I'm
I
guessing.
did like little like school play shit when I was like in elementary school or whatever, and I dug it, but I never really thought about it. And then I was in high school and I was hanging out with these kids, and they were like, "Yeah, we got to go to the audition for the play or whatever." And I was like, "Okay, I'll join you and check it out, whatever." I lived walking distance from the school. I figured might as well hang out a little bit. And it was for Little Shop of Horrors. And I was a freshman in high school, and our there was one scene. I don't know if you're familiar with the musical at all, but it's there's a part where in the movie the character played by Steve Martin is a sadistic dentist who has to call some like slap his girlfriend and call her a bitch, and that was one of the scenes to audition with, and nobody would curse for some reason. Like nobody wanted to curse in school, like in front of the teacher. Like they thought they were supposed to just not say it. And so I remember her saying, the director saying to the theater teacher saying to all the people auditioning, just fucking do, just say it, just curse. Like, and I remember to impress the girl I was trying to hit on at the time, I went like, I can do that. And I auditioned and I ended up getting the lead role in the play. And that's what made
Wow.
me do, and I never stopped doing theater ever since um, until I really started doing stand up almost exclusively.
And you didn't when did you start doing stand up, did you say?
That was in college. So, but
Yeah, tell me about college.
that was 2005. 2005, I think. 2005. Yeah, 2005 is when the first time I think I did stand up. When I did an open mic in Atlanta. And the reason why I did is because I lied to a woman who's now my ex-wife. But at the time she was a lady I was trying to impress, and she said she liked this other guy who did stand up before, and I was kind of like, oh yeah, I've done stand up as well. I totally lying straight through my fucking teeth. And she's like, oh, nice, and then I immediately drove from where I went to college at Georgia Southern to Atlanta, which is like a 4-hour drive, that weekend to do an open mic. And I did Twisted Taco Tuesdays was the name of the mic that I did at this fish restaurant in downtown Atlanta. And I did awful, like absolutely awful. And then I just kind of never talked about it again. But I was still like, I had the idea of like writing, and I was still just like writing to myself. And I did that for about 6 months or 8 more months or something like that. And then one day, at this point, I'm dating that woman, and she goes, oh, by the way, I arranged for your first stand-up show. And I was like, what? Because I invited 45 friends to all come to our friend's house, and we're all going to watch you do stand-up. And I was like, what? And I was just like, yeah, it's, and it just in a few days or something like that. I only had like a week's notice or something. And I don't even remember a single joke that I would have told then. I just remember getting really high and attempting to do stand-up. And them being my friends were obviously polite. I don't remember it being a bad experience. I do remember one of my friends trying to heckle me at one point, but that's all I really remember about it. It actually went, at least they were polite enough to make me think it went well.
Yeah, and they were supportive.
I didn't realize for a long time how much I actually sucked. You know what I mean? Like, I got some glimpses of how much I sucked, but I didn't fully realize it yet. You know, that brand new comedian stink that just doesn't quite know that that you're the stink in the room. You know, like it took a little while, but so all the time probably I did it in college. And it really sucked. And then although I had a weekly gig at a bar where I would do 2 30-minute shows every week. So it was every Wednesday. Wow. I would do 2 30-minute sets. And I was awful.
How did you were awful for 30 minutes too?
Yeah, I was awful. Oh no, it's 2 30-minute sets, so it's an hour every night.
Yeah,
so or an hour every week. Wow. That's and there was no other place to really do it. So that was really the only time I ever did perform. So like my first like 2 years, I never performed for like less than 30 minutes for the most part, except for like at stuff when I went up to Atlanta. So my first time experience in stand-up is not is not normal. It was not a normal like drop into it. It was, oh, by the way, you're doing extensive amounts of time and you have no right to be doing any of this amount of time, and are somehow so arrogant you don't realize how bad you were. Like it took like a while before someone finally told me how much I sucked. And I was like, oh shit.
But you must have maybe you got at least comfortable on stage. Was that perhaps a benefit?
Oh, for sure. I was already comfortable on stage from theaters. So
that's right. Yeah.
I already did, and I had done that. I had done dancing and singing before, and choir and other things like that, and music, and I played instruments as well. So I had been on stage so much, it never really bothered me at all. And also, like, my dad did act in some like local community theater plays and stuff like that, so I did know what. Like, he was supposedly stopped when he played a character that died in a murder mystery, and my sister, when she was a little kid, thought he really died and like screamed "No, Daddy" in the middle of the play and tried to
oh no.
But that was, so I mean, I already had been like exposed to it. My dad listened to stand up and exposed me to it, but that was the time I finally started, was those last 2 years of college before I moved to Hong Kong and lived there for 2 years and was one of their house comedians at their comedy club for 2 years. And then from there moved to Chicago and kept doing it.
Was that the plan even in college before you moved to Hong Kong that you knew you were gonna pursue stand up, or did you have other career plans? What did
No,
you
I
have?
had
What did you major in? Did you have a major?
I had 2 degrees, economics and theater, and I was going to go teach theater and English and other stuff like that abroad. And so I also taught debate at one university, and I taught like critical thinking in English, kind of like a really high end level English class where you had to do like critical debate, but in another language.
Wow.
And so I taught that. But then I realized how much I really don't enjoy teaching. Like, I think I'm okay at it, but I mean, I'm not meant to be a teacher. I don't like being around kids like that, and I can't do it. It's like too stressful for me. And then, so when I moved to Chicago, that's when I kind of realized by then that I really wanted to keep doing it. Um, and then that's when I started switching my day job over to doing computer repair, which ended up being like a much easier thing to be able to do on the side while doing stand up.
It's cool. Some flexibility for you. Tell me about the Chicago stand up scene and your journey there. And what did your mom and your dad think of you? Kind of, it sounds like pretty much going all in on stand up at this point, or at least
Yeah,
your
well, at
pursuit.
this point, my mom still, I don't think, had even like seen anything of mine or anything like that. I think they only really got to see me like once when I first came back from Hong Kong. I did a quick set at the Laughing Skull that my one of my sisters and my mom saw, which is like the only time I think she ever saw me perform stand up. And I didn't have anything like real nasty or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like I didn't, it went well. It was a short 5 minute set. It's kind of hard not to fuck that up. Just like a little itty bitty one after you've been doing it at that point for like 5 years. I think I could figure out 5 minutes. But I still wasn't really that great. And then when I moved to Chicago, my parents were supportive, but they still were like, okay, but at least have like a decent job, like. So
Yeah, of
that's when
course.
I still kept doing like IT stuff. It made it easier because I can do that during the day easily and remotely, and then still do shows and stuff. Um, and that was where I was doing okay in the Chicago comedy scene. It was a cool scene to be in. Got along with her, but that's when my three siblings and my mom and grandparents and my uncle all passed away in that like in a 2 year period while I
That's
was in
insane,
Chicago.
man. That's crazy. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it was first my sister Elise, and then my mom after that, and then my brother Eric, and then my sister Shelly right after that. All like 2 to 6 months apart, each one of them. And so that like kind of shook me awake. And then I didn't have any urge to do any stand up or anything like that at all. But I was still trying to force myself to do it, but I couldn't find the urge to care about anything really.
Or yeah, or
And
to want to be funny. I mean, is
yeah,
how could you want to be funny? Like not that I get that, but I could follow
yeah.
that.
Well, that and then I remember uh, what was it? There was one time when I was complaining on stage about my family dying or whatever. I made a joke about it, and it got a laugh, and then I was like, "Wait, what?" Like I'm like getting that off my chest actually helped both of us in that particular, like if said properly. And that's when I realized, oh, I can. That's when I'm like, so my perspective had changed on a lot of stuff. So I kind of just threw out all my material at that point and started over, and started going in with that kind of stuff, so that it matched how I felt now, as opposed to the older. When you go through like a tragedy, your personality on stuff changes, your opinion changes on stuff.
I bet. And I was reading a little bit about you. Your stand up kind of early on was more like observational stuff, maybe even a bit less personal. But it sounds like you got better, at the craft and whatnot, and overseas, and then in Chicago. It's funny, not funny, but it's interesting to hear you talk about all the tragedy you went through, and then kind
Yeah.
of like by accident or just like gradually finding your way into talking about it in your act, because it just seems like so many comedians like that is not it is their act, but it's a big part of it, like all their hardships and whatnot. And anytime something bad happens to a comedian, I'll hear them say, yo, well, at least I'll get a bit out of this or something like
Yeah,
that. So
yeah.
but you didn't have you were not having those feelings or thoughts at all. You're not like, this is not going to be something that's going to be in my act anytime soon. You were even
Well,
questioning
it told me it
whether you
fell
wanted
out.
to do stand up still. What's that?
Yeah, well, yeah, it fell out of me. It was not like I wasn't doing it on purpose. I was purposely trying to act like I was normal, which did not work, and everything fell apart. And I had to, like, the only time I felt any form of catharsis was then talking about it, and it finally decided to lean in and stop leaning out.
Yeah, wow. That's profound. And what was it like on that journey after that point? Because that's got to suck if some of those jokes about that are super
Yeah,
personal about your family and tragedy,
yeah.
on nights or in moments where they don't work, you're like, you must feel doubly shitty then if like the joke doesn't work
Yeah,
and
no, it's
it's about this terrible part of my life or
I had
sad
to learn
part of
how
my
to
life.
like to eventually to develop other material because you can't do that stuff all day every day. Like you got to do
Right.
something. Like it's just it's too much at a certain point. But luckily,
You good?
during that during that time that I was going, so you want to know what that time period was like? I mean, that's also when I got divorced as well during that time because like I just completely changed as a person and realized we were just completely different people than we were, and so there's no animosity. But we did get divorced during that time, and I realized like, um, I mean, I was probably drunk and high for the majority of that entire like 2 year period for the most part, and on drugs and everything else.
Who
Like
could blame you?
I was pushing it. It was about everything. Like I never really got in too much trouble or anything like that. Never like no DUIs, no killed people, no accidents, no nothing like that.
That's great. Almost
Um,
a little slightly surprising, but great. Not
yeah,
not
no,
surprising that things like that didn't happen, but
I take it pretty
worse
hard.
maybe.
I drink a lot. I'm impressed that I haven't had any. I didn't have any damage or anything like that. Like that, I never did something stupid like fall asleep in my car or something. You know what I mean? Like, or rather, like while the car's in the road. You know what I mean? Like sleeping
Yeah,
sleep in the
hurt
car.
yourself or hurt anyone or,
Yeah,
really damage your future in some way.
yeah. And so some I managed to get. Like I was literally like would be trying to start fights with people randomly. Like, I was an asshole. I was looking to get my teeth knocked down if I could, just to feel something. Like it was. I'd wake up,
Wow.
go get a coffee, go to work, run, and then go out to shows every single night. But I was just getting completely blackout almost every fucking night for the most part.
What about your dad? He was still around at this point, right? How was he
Yeah,
handling things? What about your relationship? I mean, there's
we created
what can you
one really because of that. Like we had just like a father-son relationship, but after everyone else died, we had like a real relationship actually formed, and we got along very well. Once we realized we were the only ones we were going to have to talk to, so you might as well go ahead and get used to it. So, it's like one of those like you're going to throw away the one family member you have left because they have some, like we would have arguments pretty easily, but they always were productive, not like until we ended up getting along great. But he did not handle the deaths nearly as well as I did. Like I actually grew from it. But you gotta imagine there's something different about losing three siblings and your mom as opposed to losing your three children and your wife. And that's a different
Yeah.
weight that he took. He's not supposed to see his children die. And he was like really in that paradigm, he should have been the first to go. But in fact, actually, he was the last one to go. So it really kind of, but for me, I could conceivably have watched all these people die in my life. He didn't need to see three of those. So he did have like there was a whole room that was nothing but photos of them and stuff like that. I found out he had like some of their hair in a box, Like I found a safe when I cleaned out his house after he died. And because he died not this last May, but the May before that, like May 2019. And I was cleaning his place out. He had a box that had all their old driver's licenses. He had apparently been keeping their driver's licenses after all of them died. So there was just a box of dead people IDs, which was like, and on the back of that box was one of the things of hair taped to the roof of the box. Like, I don't get the whole keeping somebody's hair thing. That's apparently a common thing that some people do. There's even in that Utopia TV show, one person does that, like cuts off the person's hair when they die to give it to them for memory. And I'm like, who the fuck is keeping people's hair? That is creepy as fuck to me.
Well, I think my parents did save like my baby hair, like my first hair, not the last. You know, most people don't save the last.
I don't know if they call it the last hair.
Unless it's like for like you can like use the DNA from that hair and you could like recreate the person or something like that. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think it's that weird that your dad kept all these items.
I'd be down for that. I don't know if he was a strong believer in cloning though, so I don't know if he was really trying to foresight. I don't know if he really thought he was going to live to clone someone from their hair age.
You know, also what it is. It's also, I think maybe we're getting a little deep into it, but like. I think the person who's in charge of like whoever taking care of the bodies and stuff, they might say to your dad like, "Do you want some of the hair?" And he's like, "Well, okay, I guess." Like somebody might have offered him the hair. He didn't like specifically request.
I mean, I can see that. Otherwise, that means that he went out and bought like a ribbon to tie it together himself. Which I mean, in taking the hair would be one thing, but then like. Tying it into it was also inside of a plant. I don't know. I don't want to get into this as a market. Like
everyone's got to grieve in their own way, man. Everyone's got to grieve in their own way. Just who are we to judge?
You need a piece of the old person to grieve. Like imagine somebody just holding onto your old finger, just like wishing you goodbye with your toenails. And I'm thinking like some part you can get rid of it.
I don't want to be mangled, but I think maybe we should change the topic. But for you, I mean, was the turnaround like when you started to put this more into your act? Was that your turnaround sort of emotionally? I mean, it's something. This is something I'm sure you're going to be dealing with for the rest of your life, you know. But like, was that a big turning point for you?
That was like it was about that point when I decided to dedicate myself to it a little bit after. Then I kind of made myself. I started being able to see things in a better way, and that was around the time that I made myself a promise. And I had made myself a promise that every time I think about them and I miss them, I just made a simple deal. For every smile lost, I'll make 2 more. So for everyone that I have lost by losing one of them, whenever I think about them, that's a lost smile. I have to make 2 other people happy to make up for it. So it just made a finite goal of a way of dealing with it, with the emotion and being able to constantly turn it into a positive thing. So then it would make me think of that memory that I missed them suddenly became also a joke idea. It also became like I was able to remove myself from it just enough to let it finally get in, if that makes sense. Like sometimes you need to be just distracted enough, just emotional enough to get that separation. You know, they say like time causes that, but I think really training myself to have like a mental try to turn a negative into a positive each time eventually actually taught me to look at the things on the bright side.
Like right. It became like a muscle memory, a habit in a sense that that's almost a
survival method that like helped them because you know there's not a day I don't go that I don't think about one of them. Like that's going to happen. There I think about at least one of them every single day. So that means almost every single day I have to think of something positive to do for like in 2 other instances to make up for the loss that I felt. And
dude, that's pretty. Yeah, that's pretty committed that you do that. Is it literally you're that strict about it where you?
It's for every smile taken.
I got you. I see. Show me tattoos.
Oh yeah, it's a
So,
podcast. No one's going to be able to see that.
well, that's why I'm just saying it's a tattoo. But so you actually like have the thought to yourself, I have to go make two people smile, and is that something you do in your personal
Well,
life
it
throughout your
doesn't have
day?
to. It doesn't have to be like two people exactly. It's just I have to work towards the pursuit of making more people happy.
Right, I got
So
you.
like in technically, I feel like when I was able to finally get my first album out, I felt like realistically, I have a finite number of days that I will live. My album will be around for a sight longer than I will be around. So my level of loss is limited, while the potential of making other people happy is not. So that will continue beyond me, thanks to being able to put other stuff out already and have two albums out. But so I don't have to worry about it so much as a direct equation anymore, because I know over time I'll win. That I took my negativity and turned it into something positive already, and I don't. That means I don't need to hold on to that or even that promise necessarily every single day.
Dude, that's good, man. That's inspiring. And when I go back and I'm editing this podcast and listening to it, all the things you're saying and have said for the last like 5 minutes are definitely going to click in more. I'll be like, whoa, that is pretty deep what he was saying about that. All the thought processes. It's interesting to hear that because I do hear different people have different approaches on how to like, control your emotions, but also experience them and feel them and all those kinds of things. Did you ever like uh do any like sort of like self-discovery
Meditation
things in
stuff.
terms of either meditation or therapy, or did you read books or
I've
any
done
self-help stuff?
therapy. Done therapy. Also read books. Also, what my dad was a Buddhist priest and taught me meditation and stuff like that, and I did that a lot to like clear my head. So it's a number of things of tricks learned from all of them, I guess, to kind of put together. Um,
Makes sense.
but it doesn't all come at once. But when I started, especially I think on the Buddhism side, as I leaned into it more heavily, given the idea that existence is suffering and it's my desire, in fact, for them that creates that negativity. So I have to do something to make it not negative, or rather, or not worry about desire. So, for example, whenever I would miss them, I think, well, what is it about them that I'm missing specifically right now? And then that just then leads me to what I need to know, which is what I need to replace and get something new of to no longer be sad. So, like, if I just focus on my desire, I can understand why I'm upset, which lets me in turn get rid of it.
Interesting. I got to think more deeply about some of these things in my own life so I can be more in control of my life itself. Wow, that is quite a journey, my friend. Tell me more about. I mean, I guess the last few years in your comedy journey, maybe some of the highlights or even lowlights. What
Oh
else you've
my
learned,
God.
challenges in the scene? I'll kind of give you the floor to tell me, bring me up to date on your comedy journey.
Let's see. Well, since my dad got sick in March of 2019, I had been in LA for about 3 some years at this point. But my dad started getting like sick in the sense that he like mentally wasn't quite there, and then I went there to go take care of him, and then he died 2 months later of stage 4 lung cancer. And then I cleaned out his home, and when I finally got back, when I left in March, I was getting maybe about like 15 shows a week here in LA, which was doing like really good, and I was feeling really good. And I was getting into all the clubs and everything was going in the right direction. And then when after that happened, I didn't really do for a long time, and I felt just weird. And I would occasionally do the stand up in Atlanta and stuff like that. But even when I was doing that, I was talking about my dad, so I was kind of getting it off my chest. When I tried to go back to talking about anything else when I moved, um, like it just didn't quite feel right. So like realistically, this break then happened right when I was just getting about ready. Then suddenly quarantine hits again and destroys everybody's like a
Yeah.
chance at doing stand up. So right when I was like, all right, I think I'm finally done. I've taken the time that I need to recover from this. I'll get back out there. Then suddenly, boom, quarantine, fuck you. And so essentially, but I've been on a comedy quarantine myself kind of for almost 2 years now at this point, like because of when I went to go take care of my dad. And like I would come up and do stuff and everything. And I was just starting to get back into the saddle of it when all this shit happened. Like, so I'm actually, it's finally given me the time to really work it out and I guess get a lot more calm, which I'm hoping is going to help me when things open back up again, to give me a better perspective because I feel like more confident, I think, in talking about heavier stuff when I have a calmer attitude about it and think it through.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to hear you to describe your journey in that way because that's when I saw you do stand up, which was pretty much I think right before this, the shutdowns and the quarantine and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And what I remember about you, I don't always remember every joke and every punchline, but I might remember a subject that a person talks about, something about their story and how they made me feel and if they made me laugh. And I do remember you telling jokes about your dad. I remember you, mentioning that he passed and talking about personal things and being funny. So I do remember those jokes.
That just happened.
Your dad stuff worked. I thought it was working for me that night, my friend.
Thanks, man. No, it actually was working really well, and so it was like I was actually getting ready to start on my third album when when my dad first got sick, and then I ended up writing like 30 minutes worth just on his death and everything, and my experiences with that happened during then, like, and all the weird stuff like you get going through the entire medical system from start to finish, like from diagnosis to death. And
yeah, I remember it was a big chunk of your act, and I was like, "Oh, damn, this is impressive." Because a lot of comedians I see, or not a lot, but like, I feel you know more about this than me, but I feel like there's a danger of when you're talking about like your trauma or your tragedy or your problems for it to turn into a therapy session or a pity party. And I feel like sometimes the comedians always I'm sure everyone wants to make the audience laugh, but it almost feels like you're not making me laugh. You're making me feel bad for you. You're trying to get sympathy or laughs. And as long as you get laughs, you'll get, I don't want to say sympathy, but you'll get people feeling, empathetic or something.
It's important to have a honest observation on it and stuff like that. And it's something and it normally will come across fine as long as you really just got to ask yourself if you're about to bring up anything, even something sensitive like this. Like, I just imagine the audience either asking, so what, or for example. And if I don't answer one of those questions, then I'm losing the audience. So like every sentence should in theory ask that or answer that one of those two questions, and that will keep everybody engaged. And if that doesn't tell you how to, that philosophy won't teach you how to be funny, but that philosophy will teach you how to keep people interested, at least in what you're talking about. And so that's what I try to apply to it, so I don't accidentally go off the rails and start talking about sappy shit or anything like that. Like, I find it best to keep as private details out as much as possible and keep it as generic, so it'll also apply to as many people as possible, unless it's something someone else did, in which case be as specific as you want. But if it's something like, I don't see any point in pontificating over the actual sadness of death or anything, when I could really just tell you the story of how of like something stupid that happened. You know what I mean? Like, so that it's much more a relatable way to deal with it, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting and it's cool to see the comedians talk about something vulnerable in their life or a tragedy, but not come across like they are looking for pity. But it's more like this. So what? This fucked up thing happened to me, or there's this fucked up thing about me. Here I am, and I'm telling you about it in like this confident way, and that impresses me for sure.
Well, thanks, man. It's once you get it, I feel like it gets so much easier once you do it, and like you realize. I think one thing that really helped me especially after talking about my family for so long. So before talking about the dance stuff, I would talk about that. And I realized, because people would tell me after shows, they would go like, "Oh, like I had a similar experience," and then they would just like they always go, "I'm not comparing myself," but then they would tell me about some kind of death that they went through. Like they had to like share that, and I think I realized from that, instead of getting bummed out by it, maybe kind of realize, pain isn't special, so why would you keep it to yourself? It's recovery that's unique. That's what's actually special, not the idea that. But people still will, like, whenever you've had somebody like tell you their pain, I bet you they probably did some shit like, "Oh, you'll understand," and like as if that was the prerequisite to be able to share the idea of pain, was that someone fully understand your problem to be able to even tell them about it at all. And it's like, you don't need qualifications to care for somebody. You don't need qualifications to go, "Oh, that sucks, man." You don't need those kind, but yet people still insist on only sharing their pain with people who know exactly what it is or isn't like.
I guess it's a shared experience, but at the same time, the fact that you can have an audience engaged and feeling what you want them to feel and appreciate your stories and jokes and be laughing too, it shows that there's universal emotions.
And that's why I didn't find anything wrong about making jokes about it. It's in the end, it became the most relatable thing I could talk about. Was the most private thing that happened to me. So it ended up making the most sense once you actually jump in. It's counterintuitive at first, but once you actually get into it, it's very cathartic to get all that shit off your chest and know that other people have been through similar shit.
For real. Well, yeah. I say, sir, that you are an inspiration. And that's honestly like a big part of why I reached out to you all these months later and why you ended up on my, maybe I should talk to him someday and reach out, blah, 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 blah. Because the dude is funny and raw and honest and real and on stage and all that. And I appreciate that and appreciate your time here. Why don't you tell people where they can find you, follow you, anything else you're working on? Okay. I'll give you the floor to do your thing.
Well, I need to find a better way to say this, but it's always all my handles on everything are at Sean White Comedy, so SEAN White Comedy. There's got to be a better way to say that, but I need to tell people how to spell my name, and everybody knows how to spell the word white, so it just comes out like a racist thing every time. But either way, at Sean White.
Oh, Comedy, I didn't even pick up on that. I'm like, I'm following. I'm like, Sean. He explained the letters. That's how to spell it. I'm like, I think he's doing this right. No, I don't know if as many people are thinking about that as you think, because it's a popular last name.
I'm sure it's my own neuroses or even to think anyone gives a shit. But at Sean White Comedy and all those, and the only show that I'm really doing routinely is the Star Wars show on Mondays that starts at 10 o'clock Eastern time, based out of Atlanta. That's an old hometown favorite show that I'll do every now and then. But other than that, you can see me posting pictures of my cats on Instagram and then making bad joke attempts on Twitter. Those are both there. I don't use Facebook for anything anymore, but they own Instagram. So it's not like I'm morally better for not using it. I just don't have anything to do on there. Too many people respond, it's just, I want out. But other than that, there's not much fuck all going on until there's a vaccine. Otherwise, I'm not going anywhere.
We'll see how things shake out. Hopefully, society can get back to normal in 2021 soon enough, and I could see you out there on a stage doing your thing again. But again, I appreciate your time, man. It's been fun.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Thank you very much for having me. And I hope this fucking goes great. Hope to see you out in the real world again one day.
Soon enough. Thanks, man. Take care.
Take care.
So there you have it. My conversation with Sean White. That dude is a great storyteller and an inspiration. For real. And of course, he's funny too. Sometimes when he's not even trying to be. But I definitely again thank Sean for his time and for sharing his very personal story with me. Anyway, for everything about this show, of course, head to peoplewelovepodcast.com. That's at People We Love Podcast on Instagram as well. And I'm at Adam Choit on Instagram and Twitter. And I think that's about all I got for today. I appreciate you guys listening for sure. Thanks as always. Sorry it's been a minute since I've had a new episode. I'm going to do my best to continue to pump out new ones weekly. I'll try. Anyway, peace.